Um, so, um, so good evening, everybody. Let me check whether we are live with streaming or not. The last time, yes, we are live with streaming. That's perfect. So I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to get started. I hope my screen is visible. Yes. Okay. Um, so once again, hello everyone and welcome. Today's session is titled Getting the Best Out of Excel Data Sources. Excel is still one of the most widely used tools for data storage and reporting. However, when used as a data source for Power BI or other analytics tools, structure and discipline become critical. And in this session, um, Bernat is going to explore how to properly design Excel files so they are reliable, scalable, and efficient for just analytics. And so, just yes. Also, we are mainly going to focus on practical and real-world best practices, and just whatever we are going to, demonstrate is not just theoretical ideas, but I hope our speaker will walk through patterns developed with real customers to ensure that our models stay fast, clean, and reliable. And so, let me introduce our speaker. Just This is Bernat Agulló Roselló. I hope I pronounced his name correctly this time. Who is a senior BI developer and partner at Esprina with deep expertise in helping organizations extract value from their data. He's also a contributor to Tabular Editor, an organizer of Power BI and Fabric Barcelona user group, Microsoft Data Platform MVP since 2022. I hope I'm correct with date. I hope he will be giving the necessary info about himself in next minutes. Regarding our upcoming speakers, we are also having exciting upcoming sessions in our meetup series. The next upcoming speaker is Alexandra Zakharova from France, who is dealing stuff related to MCT MCT program. And after Zakharova, we are going to host a session with Amit Chandak, who is also Data Platform MVP. A little bit about the meetup rules. Before we continue, just a few quick reminders. This session is lively streaming on YouTube. And so it means that you will have an opportunity to watch also recorded version of this session. So we're going to have 10 to 15-minute Q&A session at the end of the main presentation. So let's keep the session interactive and respectful for everyone. This is about our session schedule. The first 5 minutes is introduction that I'm doing right now. Then Bernat Agulló Roselló will take the stage, and I hope for 45 or 50 minutes he will do the main presentation, and then we'll have Q&A session. And I encourage you to stay connected with our community. You can follow all updates, events, and recordings through our meetup group, so-called Azerbaijan Data, Excel, Fabric, and AI community. So I don't want to take your time. Just I would like to deliver stage to Bernat. Bernat, the stage is yours. Good luck. Now I'm going to uh, stop sharing. So yes.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I'm having some technical difficulties at the moment, but let me see. Yeah, it looks like it is kind of working, but it's bringing my computer to a halt almost. Let me try again.
Now your screen is visible. Bernard, I don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I hear you, Will. Now it's okay.
Okay. It's still not opening for some reason. Come on.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Yeah, it's not really answering my prayers. Okay. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll start with a demo and then we'll move on there. So let's see if I can show you more or less what I want to talk about. So yeah, this is in one of my projects, a very large customer. So it was not like the headquarters, but one important branch. And they say, yes, we want to, bring our data state to the next level and stuff. And we need some help. And okay, it looks like my application is now working. Okay, is that the? Okay, let me close it.
You have used, I mean, joined using your two addresses, accounts. So
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. Let me try one more time. But now it's going to be better.
I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Normally, I'm better at this. So let me make my quick presentation. So you already introduced me very nicely, so I'm going to skip this part. And so I'm going to move on to the next one, if I can. Come on. Oh, this can be true. Okay, okay. Finally, we can get to the first slide. So we are as a data practitioners, we always hope that our customers especially if we have to develop a Power BI report. We hope that the customer has already like super clean data in a beautiful data warehouse, fully documented and so on. But this is not always the case. The next best case scenario is when they say, hey, we do have several applications and we have access to the database and we just need some report. So it's not perfect because data, well, it might not be in the best shape for Power BI, but still data has, data types are always correct, and you have also foreign keys, and all this part is normally sorted out. So that's something that you don't have to worry about. There's also the possibility that they say, well, we can only access through to our data through APIs, meaning that, well, you will need to build like some structure and so on so that you can extract this data in a timely manner and so on. But mostly APIs will return, valid data. It's not like free fall. So you will get like, correct data. And on the back end, things should work as well, right? So you don't have problems of referential integrity. But finally, we get to the Excels. Yeah, Excel is like everything goes because anyone can modify an Excel file. And even if they come out from the source, people may do things to them. And I don't know. And there's many manually maintained files, and these are the most dangerous ones, okay? So what happens when we just say, yeah, load this file, we go to Power Query, say, hey, yes, I have these files in SharePoint, and well, this is, and you just follow the happy path that Microsoft makes for you. You go to when you have all the list of files, you click combine, and it kind of creates a query and a function for you, and then you modify the query, the function gets updated, and more or less you manage to get the information in a tabular shape, and you think, okay, maybe that's all I have to do, right? However, I'm sure you have experience when you build the pipeline like this, or you build like your data ingestion in this manner, there is frequent errors. Frequent errors like this kind of thing. Like in one file, there's one column that is not correct, then everything crashes. You cannot update data at all. Or sometimes you might have seen something like this. So it does load, but you get some errors there. And it's kind of, well, unnerving, and you don't know really what is wrong. And it's not so easy to check what values are wrong and so on. So, sorry, yeah, this is just bigger. So we need to focus on the 4 things that happen in a database. Oh, sorry, too much. Happen in a database, but do not happen in Excel files, because this is the part that we'll have to develop. Yeah. So especially in Excel, what happens is that you may have data spread across several files, right? This is not something that happens in a database, but in Excel, you need to be sure that all the files share the same schema, yeah? Because this might not always be the case. And if there's one that is wrong, then you don't want the whole thing to break down. You want to say, okay, this file has a wrong schema, but the rest is, you can load the rest, and well, you still have some data, yeah? Also, even if they have the correct schema, maybe the data underneath is not so great. Yeah, so we say you expect a date, and then maybe some random text comes there. Yeah, again, what should you do in these cases? You certainly need to know that this is happening, and at the same time, you want to load some decent data in your model. Yeah, as good as possible. And then comes the matter of primary keys. Yeah, so even if you have say a product table, you don't have the guarantee that there is no duplicate ID in there, because there is no primary key enforcement in an Excel file. And that is dangerous, because if you do joins in Power Query and you have a duplicate key, you will duplicate the record and you will get wrong data. And you may not even know it, because it's not going to produce any error. You just have wrong data. And if you're lucky, it's going to be obvious, but you might not be lucky. Yeah, so okay, you need to get rid of duplicates, but again, you cannot just say, hey, remove duplicates and forget about it. You need to remove duplicates and at the same time say, but you should know that you have some duplicates, and these are the duplicates, and they are here, and you should go and sort them out. Yes. And finally, there's also a problem. Say, okay, so you have your sales data, and then you join it with your product table because you want to use some different ID or something like this. But again, you don't have the guarantee that all the products in your sales data are going to be matched in your product table. So, and if there's a value or more that don't match, you cannot really analyze those data, and you should also get a notification or something, a warning that you should really do something about that product table because maybe it's missing some of the new values. Yeah, that might happen, especially if it's manually maintained. Yeah, because that I've seen that sometimes. And so these are the 4 things that we should really take care of. Okay. So this is more or less the image of what we are about to do. Okay. So we'll have our files will be in folders. Of course, each folder should be nicely sorted, and you should have a folder for each month and this thing, depending on the granularity. But the first thing we'll do is remove the invalid files, the files that do not match, say basically the schema. But of course, I mean, if we are looking for data in certain sheet with certain name and that sheet is not there, then of course that file is not correct either. Yeah. And also then we'll remove the invalid data, so meaning data that does not match the data type. So if you have some text or something, what we're gonna do is like in the main stream of data, the clean one, we're gonna just remove those specific values with null. So we still get most of the data of that record. This is a decision I made. I mean, you can do it differently, yeah? But that's one way of doing it. So say, okay, this data is null, but of course you need to know that there's invalid data in there. So we do this other revert, so to say, yeah. And again, with the duplicate, so if a column is supposed to be unique values, then you remove the duplicates and you continue down the stream. But those duplicates, you need to bring them into this problems report. And the same for referential integrity violation of saying, hey, this value is not on that other table and it should be there because we are counting on that. Okay. As you see, the dirty water becomes cleaner, and here we get all the problems in this other stream. Yeah. So this is the idea. So how are we going to do that in Fabric? Yeah. Because I mean, you can do that also in Power BI Pro. That's actually how I've been doing that in this customer. We're using data flows Gen 1 because that's all they could use up till now. We'll see if we finally get permission to use some Fabric items because they do have a capacity. I mean, it's like premium capacity, but they cannot use it yet, really. But anyway, the structure is very similar. So this is the names we've been using there. I think they're quite nice as well. So we create 2 layers here, yeah? First layer is just landing. This is very common in many data pipeline architectures. So it's basically we grab the data from the Excel and SharePoint, and individually we just bring them into Fabric. Yeah, this is, since it's being data flow Gen 2, we're gonna write the results in a lakehouse. But actually for each data source, we're gonna write 6 different tables. Yeah, so one is the main table. So it's a table that skips all the invalid files, has all the invalid data is null, and if it has duplicates, we remove those. And also, oh, I didn't mention, this is not really for data quality or anything, but a field mapping is also important if you're writing to a lakehouse, because in a lakehouse you cannot use like special characters or uppercase, lowercase for fields. So the idea is that you keep track of what you're going to call the names in the lakehouse and what were the original names. So you can keep working in your pipeline with the names of the lakehouse. And then finally, maybe on the Power BI report, if you want to restore the original field names, you can do that with this field mapping, but it's quite straightforward and recommended to do that. And finally, we also create a refreshed stats, because also we need some metadata of what is being loaded, because if we assume that we get the data, yeah, somebody has put the file in the folder, but nobody has done that, you're also going to get wrong data, right? And there, so we just get like a small table saying, okay, when was this last refresh, but also what's the latest creation date of the file, or when was the latest modified date of the file. So we can see if there's anything wrong just from this table, and depending on the frequency of each file and so on, you can set up alerts or alarms or I don't know, KPIs, whatever. Yes. So basically each table now is inside, we just get rid of the duplicates, but if we have duplicates here, we put them in a different table, say, hey, these are the duplicate files. Same with the file errors, we'll see how we catch these errors so that we get a table, say, hey, this file was not loaded because we have this error, yeah? And same with the data. This value was converted to null because it's text and we expected a date or something like this. All right, okay? We'll see now that in detail. But anyway, this is just one source, one set of tables, so to say. But of course, here we don't see this referential integrity problem. Yeah, if you expect all the products of the sales table to be in the products table. So that's basically what we do here in level 2. In level 2, we do well, you can do many things like different logics and so on, but two of the key things that you might want to do is if people are using like names instead of product IDs, so to say, this is a step in which you want to replace the name with a product ID, okay? Because it's easier and better in general. So, and then you're gonna join with the product table using the product name and then bring back just the product ID. This is one of the things. And also this is the place where you're gonna see if there's some values missing in the, so if you are in the product table, in the sales table and you're joining with the product table, or sometimes you will also find, especially when data is not like super clean, that before joining with the dimension table, you will need to use a mapping table because people sometimes use different names for the same thing, which is terrible. So you will have a table with all the names that you have found throughout your data sources, and you might have to add new rows to that file, and then decide, okay, when this is the name, when we receive this name, we actually mean this other thing. Yeah, this will help you clean up your mess, basically. Yeah, and we can create this table saying, hey, these are missing. Okay, so once we have all this, now we have the clean data that we can use it on reports, which is good. But also we have all these other extra tables that we can use for a data flow refresh monitor semantic model that will tell you all the errors that are happening in your pipeline. Okay, but in a controlled manner. So you will not have errors in your data flows or your semantic model. You will have a report saying you should fix this, and this. Okay, so that's why it's very important that some sort of data steward or more looks at this report like daily and then decides what happens with all these errors. Because there's two possibilities, right? One possibility is that suddenly the system has upgraded and the export format has changed. And that's something that we need to account for. So if that's the case, then it's when the steward needs to call the developers, hey, we have this situation, we need, I don't know, make it any way you want, but now the new file is like this. So please change the logic so that you can read this. Maybe it's a different data source and then you join it later. I don't care, but now it's a new format. But it's going to be like this forever or something like this, okay? Or sometimes say, hey, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, this column sometimes it's called like this or like that, but this is how it is. Please consider this valid data, make it happen. Make it happen so that it's not an error and it can go in. Yeah, so if it's something that is agreed, then it's okay. Then we can modify the data so that it goes inside. And but sometimes it's wrong data. Yeah, especially if it's data that is manually maintained, and then you realize that somebody put a duplicate in the products table. Well, if that's the case, then you need to go and fix it. Yeah, and decide which is the correct ID and remove the row that is invalid or assign a new ID or whatever. Or maybe somebody just put a completely random file in a data source folder. And of course that errored out. If somebody put a PDF there and like, okay, what is this doing here? I don't know, this sort of thing. So you might also decide, I mean, it could something that the data steward can go and fix, or maybe say, hey, no, we really need that PDF in that folder, just make sure that it doesn't get loaded.
it produces this error. Anything, but the goal is that this data flow refresh monitor does not show errors because either they have been addressed, changing the logic or changing the file. Okay, this is very, very important. All right, so now we reach this point. It's the moment we can see somehow how the demo works. This is the GitHub. So we're gonna use like a very standard data flow that I've put together with everything I learned throughout the project I was talking about, and also some new ideas that I had. Like when you do it the second time, like, oh, but actually it should be you have better ideas than the first one, yeah. So you will find here the template for the main data flow. Also for the one that removes the duplicates, because this might be a specific case. And also a template also for this data flow refresh monitor thing I was mentioning, okay? So let's have a look. So now it looks like things are working. Now, so that you get an idea, these are the different data sources. I recommend also to have a similar structure. So one folder for each data source with a nice name. And then, of course, depending on the data source, you will have like, if it's just one file per year, you don't need any folders. But if it's something more frequent, you might want to do something more. Like here in sales, we have one for each year. And here we have one for each month. That's okay. Yeah. And I don't know, I think there might be another one, support tickets. Yeah, here maybe we probably need year as well here, but here we have one folder for each month, and then inside we have just one folder, but you see that the folder, the file does not give you the date. So sometimes you will need to either grab the date from the file name or the data contained, or sometimes you don't have either and you just need to assume that the data is correct because it's in that folder, and then you just need to grab the date from the folder structure. Everything is possible. But I mean, this is something that you can configure on your own, okay? So let's have a look on how we organize this thing, okay? While this loads, I'll try to start opening something else. Okay. So you can see here I have for each data source one data flow. Yeah, this is also good so that you can keep very similar structures without making a mess and everything. And also this way something fails, but the rest can load. And you can have also different schedules for each of the data flows. This is very important because Excel data sources are slow. So if something is very big, but it only updates like once a year or something, you don't really want to load that every time in your model from SharePoint. So you can do it with the data flow, and then reading from either a data flow or a lakehouse, it's going to be much, much faster than reading from an Excel file in SharePoint, yeah? Okay, what did I open here? Is it still opening? Okay, let's have a look here. For instance, yeah, let's pick up the first one. I'm not checking if there's any question, but if there is, feel free to stop me.
Um,
Yes.
Actually, I'm noting all the questions and I will ask them at the end of the session.
Okay.
It's okay for you. Okay.
Sure, no problem. Okay, sorry, my computer is extremely slow these days, especially if I'm sharing my screen or stuff like this. Yeah, here there should be like some documentation on everything you need to change. There are, of course, some aspects. I tried to make this data flow as dynamic as possible so that you don't have to change too many things. But of course, there are things that will be necessary to change because each file might have different characteristics. here I tried to make more or less real. I built all this dummy data with Claude, and there is so it even made me like a small table saying, hey, you should change this and this and this. Come on, it's going up. But yeah, in essential, you will have like the SharePoint side, the root is something that you need to have separately. And this is probably what you're gonna want to change first of all. Yeah, so it goes all the way to the site name. And then in another parameter, you can have the rest of the structure until that root folder that we were seeing here, yeah? So come on. Do you want to hide this thing? You don't. Okay, whatever. So yeah, so here it's mentioning everything you need to do. Purpose, Oh, the schemas is still there, but please write like today you cannot really write from a Dataflow Gen 2 to different schemas in the same lakehouse. It's not working. They are working on the fix, but right now it doesn't work. It will write all the tables to one of the schemas randomly. So here I changed and I'm writing all the tables on a lakehouse without schemas, which since we are following a naming convention, it's okay. It's not too messy. But anyway, so you need to, of course, update these things. I have like two different parameters. One is the data source folder and one is the business entity. If you're super tidy, it might be just one parameter, but sometimes the folder is called something and you cannot change that. But you want the table to, the business entity, at least how you want to know that, a different name. And all the tables that you create in the lakehouse and so on should the business entity in camel case, but still the same, yeah? You will see that there's quite a few generic functions. Well, some others have more, especially the ones with the duplicates. These are functions that do not depend on this at all. These are actually functions that I use throughout my projects and that you can find in and that GitHub that I shared with you, that's a specific one for this project that it has like the Dataflow template. Yeah, but I have a more generic one just called Power Query where I have all these functions, okay? And so like this, you can find them there. Now, here are the functions that are specific to that particular file, okay? And here, finally, we start with the basic queries, yeah? Here, the only important one is SharePoint files. This is just a very basic one, so like super, super easy one. I like to keep these queries separate from the rest. Like this is the query that accesses the source, yeah? And I stop it there. These are what I call the source queries. So if I connect it to SharePoint and a SQL database and so on, this would be here. And then anything I do with this, I will do a reference and then I'll start like dealing with that, okay? So again, you imagine this would be like the full rigor. Yeah, and more or less. And the next thing we need to do, of course, is to filter all this full list into, just the list of files that are supposed to go in this data source. Here you will see I'm still using these SharePoint files instead of SharePoint folders because this makes it a bit easier to reach the file level and then it's more flexible, assuming that you have like just, like no folder structure or year and file or year, month and file. Anything will work with that, even if it's not the same speed. So anyway, that's how I put it together. Yeah, so here we get this file list and I stop here. Yeah, you can see. Now from here, there's a few things that I create. You can see here I will get like the maximum of the date modified. or the file created. These are things that I will use later on this refresh stats table I was mentioning. And now, sorry, and then from this list, I point to the first file, for example. Yeah. So here, this example file. Then let's see. You see what it does. It just grabs the content, so like the binary stuff of the file of the first one. Yeah. So we get here that Excel icon thing. So it's not a table or anything like that. And it's always called example file. And now you will see why. Because as you can see here, I don't have that typical thing that Power Query generates when you say append file, and it creates this super complex thing with a parameter and a file and a query and a function and 2 levels of folders. I like this much better, yeah, because as you will see, here is the logic. Here is where you transform a single file into a table, okay? But of course, not many people like to code directly here. So what is to be done? Okay, this is the only like trick that I would say is here, which is when you have it like this and you comment out this first row, yeah, you see now this example file, it's going to be that file that we just saw. So the good thing is that now this function becomes a normal query. Yeah, so it's going to take much longer than regular, but it's going to be a regular query so that we have all the UI and we can go step by step and check what is going on. So this is very, very convenient way of working. And the main reason is also because, okay, this still didn't change. Because here we can use the UI to say, okay, remove 3 rows. I mean, it's actually the same that you do when you append the files there in the UI normally. But this has a superpower, and is that since it is the same query, I mean, you get all the steps, so you can debug and so on. But at the end, when you finish editing your query, and you are sure that you have the query that you want, then you can just, well, you have to just go back and remove those comments, those slashes that make this a comment. And it comes back to a function. And you say, but why are you doing Bernat? Looks like much more complex than having that, linked function. Well, the main reason is because sometimes I've experienced that a few times, and Power Query will break the link between that function and the query, and it will not tell you that until you go nuts, and then suddenly you realize that the link has been broken. Yeah, so especially if you import from a template or you move the code around or so on, there is a big chance that this link is going to be broken. So you really don't want that to happen. And this, I think, it's much cleaner, and also it works just fine. So basically now we have a function that transforms each file into a table if everything is fine. Oh, one thing I want to mention, I'll just show it here. You see in this last step, I say, okay, select columns, and I say all the columns, yeah? And this is a way of making explicit what's the schema of my table. So if there's any column that is not there, I want it to fail. That's why I add this step here. Because if one column, suddenly they change the name, yeah, the system now gives the column, but with a different name, then it's I mean, I want to know. I don't want it to be dynamic or anything like that. I don't want new columns on my table. I want it to fail. I want to realize that something is wrong and then fix it because I mean, I will have to go and put it the data type and so on. So I don't want anything of this to be dynamic. I really prefer it to fail. Okay. So anyway, we have this file list, and now we add a column saying, okay, now I want to make a new column called data, and which will convert each of the files in a table. but this will work or will not. Yeah, and this is one of these points in the river in which we need to decide which way are we going. So in this case, everything is fine, and we have tables for each of them. But here is when we have the two roads. Yeah, so this is a happy path. It's like, okay, let's continue with the clean water. But see, the first step that I have here is say, hey, if any of these rows resulted in error, it's time to get rid of it. Yeah. So I remove any rows in which the function has resulted in error. So I'm sure that now all the rows result in a table. Perfect data. Okay. So next one, what does this do? Also, yeah, this is, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure this is necessary. I had some errors like, hey, you have a null or something. Well, it doesn't really say, okay, if you have a null there, also skip it. And now, okay, we can get rid of most of the columns. Here in this, I think I get rid of all of it. But if you wanna, I just leave the source file. I created that, concatenating the file name and the path, because it's good to have a way to go back, like where did that go wrong and so on. And now here, I just basically, now I expand this column. You see here, I'm using a custom column, a custom function, because I don't like that huge code that Power Query generates with all the names and the source and all the names later. This is much cleaner, and this is dynamic. So even if your file changes, you don't need to go in here and change anything, because it will go to the first file and say, hey, because it's also the one you use for the function, and say, okay, what's your schema? What's your column names? And it will use those column names to expand it. So this is dynamic. Okay. So you have your data, but you see that we don't have data types yet. So in this step is when we say, okay, what data type is each column? So you can do it any way you want. If you want to leave it to the machine and then you select, say detect data type, you probably don't want to do that. So you might want to just select around. This is something that you will have to do because each file is different. But of course, here we said, I don't know, this should be a number, but who knows? Maybe in that Excel somebody put, I don't know, to be defined or whatever. And you certainly don't want that. So here again, it's a moment in which we stop in our river. And we might have like a clean wave path, but of course, if there's some wrong data, we also need to take care of that. Let's continue with just the clean path for now. So now we move on the next query. And here I also created a dynamic function so that you don't have to type all the names of the field, because otherwise you would have to change it every time. But here what it will do, here it kind of creates a list of lists saying, okay, this field null, this field null, this field null, all the fields that you have. That way I can pass this to the next step and say, okay, for any field of that table, if you find an error, replace it with null. It is very nice. So you don't have to specify any of the fields because you want to do the same thing for all the fields. Okay, so here, if there was wrong data, you would get a null. Very good. But you see, we still have the source names. You cannot use these names in Lakehouse. So we go into the next query, and we're going to do it in a different query so that we can later compare both and create that mapping table I was telling you about. So we go to the snake case names, and basically using another function, which has quite more logic than I usually had. So here the Claude also helped me to improve that. You see that now I have like lowercase with underscores, and even the ones that had like percent signs now have like PCT and stuff like this. So it's all good. Even if you have a column that starts with a number, then it will put like a letter C in the front, or no title at all, it will put something for you. And if you have the same header twice, it will put a 2 for you, which is all good. So this is actually pretty much the table that we already won. But let's grab all these extra tables that I was mentioning. So here for field mapping, this is also dynamic. You don't need to change anything because these are two steps that are going to always be the same. It grabs the two tables and say, okay, make me a mapping table. What's the first field name here and what's the first field on the other one? And it generates this beautiful mapping table. Yeah. So you have all the original names and all the bakehouse names. Now let's go and see all the problematic stuff. As you can see here in the file errors, if we go to the source file, you see it goes to the 040 file check. So it's reading from this one. And now, so here I already embedded all the logic inside a function saying, okay, go there, select the errors and so on. So maybe I should have opened one with errors. Yeah, maybe we should do that. See, this already opened. Okay. Okay, let's jump here real quick so that you see what's the end game here, yeah? We're seeing now, we saw more or less the clean path, but now all the other tables that you might think, Bernat, you're overdoing it. That's a lot of weird tables that nobody asked for. But these tables are important to give you this view. So here we have for each business entity when was refreshed, if it was all okay, or it had some problems, and then the files that it loaded when they were created and when were they modified. This might have some logic that you want to know about, okay? And also how many files, so you can know more or less if everything is like what you expect to be. And here we have support tickets and web traffic. In web traffic, we see that there's one file that didn't load at all. And in support tickets, we have 2 data errors, okay? And now you probably want to know more about them. So in file errors, you have here for web traffic, it's saying, hey, this bounce rate percentage of the table wasn't found. Okay. And this and you want to know like, oh, really, is that the case? So and you have a link that will bring you directly to that file that failed, which is, oops, found. Oh, that's interesting. Why is this? Come on. That's interesting. Well, it's not really interesting. It's but this was supposed to work. Support tickets. Oh, I know why. Sorry. All right, my bad. This is because I was building first like the old school report to say, hey, this is terrible. So make those screenshots and so on. So basically in this, which was it? The web traffic one, I added one more file that would break the whole thing. Okay, that's why I didn't find it. But this, we need to create the folder. The folder is 2020-501. Okay. I mean, so we don't have to refresh the whole thing, yeah? And the file, come on, where is it? Yeah, this is the web traffic, yes. And the file we want to see is, oh, sorry, it's over here. That's the one. Okay, so the thing is that this file is wrong. Yeah, let's check once again if I can open the file. Okay, looking good. Yeah, so this was the original file that was there. And during the refresh, you see this, it has this column rate of bouncing instead of the bounce rate percent. Yeah, so I just changed the name to make it break. So this is what you would get. Yeah. And also here for support tickets, it's saying that, hey, we couldn't convert to a number. We also have like a URL that will bring us there. And we can go and see what is going on. So this would be the work of this data steward. Say, hey, how is that even possible? Yeah. And then first double check what is going on. And then from there, we'll probably contact. Yeah. So here I just replace a couple of values and say, okay, let's put an NA and see what happens. So you can actually go there. And here it even says like source row. So it will give you the row of data. Yeah. So not the first row, but the second one. So very, very convenient as well. Okay. And so this is the two things. Well, so in this layer one, we saw how we generate this. I'm running out of time as usual. And let me just go real quick here. So just so you see how the very important step, yeah, because these are more or less automatic. So you don't really need to change anything at all here. You just need to change here in the data check. You need to put, of course, the data types and modify the file, the function. These are the two things you need to change. And then you basically need to rename all these tables to match your business entity. Yeah, use names that you can use inside the lakehouse. Just do the regular snake case so that you don't have different names here and in the lakehouse. And that's it, because this already has like a data destination. If you import the query, the template, it will ask you, of course, to authenticate with whatever SharePoint you're using. And here it will also require you to connect to the lakehouse. But you see, this is just the default destination. And you see that here, there's not much of a headcount. What is going on here? Oh, yeah, here in this one, I added one more column saying, hey, when did that exactly come in? I don't know. Claude said it was a good idea. So just adding one more column, but I didn't want to do it earlier because then you cannot do the comparison. So that's why this step is here. But other than that, there is nothing at all happening. So it's just like a connection with the previous step, and then just with a new name. And this is the one that has the data destination. All right, this is more or less what happens. Let's have a look at let's see what. Yeah, let's jump straight into the product mapping. Or no, let's go into products. So let's open this also in SharePoint. See if I can find it in time. Products and products. So this is also a file I tampered with. So basically, here is the only place where we have product ID, yeah? So sometimes we were gonna join through the product name and sometimes with product ID. So what I did is I added a duplicate here and a duplicate here. Yeah, so each of them should be a primary key on its own. So here the cool thing is that this is something I didn't have, but as I was building this, hey, this should be a function as well. And it's gonna take forever. So let's first have a look what's the end game, which is here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So when you go down, you can see here that in products, we got two pairs of duplicates. Yeah, so we have three groups. So two in products and one in product mapping. And say, hey, in row 6 and row 9, you're using this same product ID, which is true, we just saw that. And in row 3 and row 10, you have this other duplicate by product name. You should not have either of them. So this is something that should be checked. And also in the product mapping is the one that has like what's all the possible source names and what's the real name. In there, also in the source name column, you should not have any duplicates. And apparently there's two. With row 17 and 20, there's something called standing desk. This should not happen. Okay. And finally, there's the other thing. Yeah. So this one I added also the link. So here, because it's a bit more difficult because it's something that is not there. So it's not, you cannot go there and find it immediately. But anyway, it's saying that in sales, we have in the source name, in sales, we have this value yeah, Laptop Pro 10 as product, but in the source name, in the product mapping, it's not there. So you should add it or do something about this. And the same also for products so in mapping, we have a row saying, hey, the real name that you should be using is 37-inch monitor. But when you go to the product table, there's no product called like this. So this is also calling out on that. Yeah. So this is how you more or less can manage all your data sources. And that's I think all I can say with my time. I hope that some of it makes sense. But anyway, you can give it a try going through the no, this is not the repository. This is the general one. But if you go to the one I shared the QR code for, you will find the two Excel to Fabric one, and you will find the two templates, one for the regular Excel files and the one for the ones that you want to check for primary keys as well. Yeah. And there are a few more also for level 2 to seeing all those missing values and so on. There are some extra functions and so on that then you need to provide many parameters, but then all the logic is built in, and that's not something that you should change too much. So I think it makes the work much more convenient. And the thing is that data flow should not fail at all because you already handled all the errors. Of course, you might be missing something. You can always add more logic, clean up the files. We didn't do that, for instance, but you can do that as well. There's many more things you can do, but I'm sure that you have some questions that are much more interesting.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have some questions and some comments. So if you don't mind, I would like to start with comments.
Yeah.
Actually, Christian made, unfortunately, he left due to some personal issues. So
Okay.
he said that excellent explanatory presentation slides. He loved your presentation slides.
Mhm.
And then we have three, questions, two from Aurora, whose first question is, will this solution work if the Excel files are on OneDrive? How about a network shared folder? That was the first question from her side.
Sorry, what shared folder? Network shared folder. Oh,
Yes.
good question. So OneDrive for business, I think it's basically the same as SharePoint. But anyway, you see that it's just SharePoint only enters as a connector kind of thing. So as long as you can connect there and see the list of files, you'll be good. Yeah, so I think through the network drive, definitely yes. It might be a little bit difficult to find the real path that you need to put in Power Query, because you probably are accessing through the gateway, and most likely your IT department mapped super long and ugly thing to just like L or H or whatever, some letter. But I think it can be done. I mean, I've loaded files from shared network drives. So, but it was a bit tricky because the IT would keep changing that and I would have to, fix it, but it is possible. And for OneDrive, I haven't checked, but if it's OneDrive for business, then yes. If it's a personal OneDrive, I'm not sure.
Yeah, she confirms that for network shared folder drive required data gateway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second question from Aurora is like, what costs are expected for this solution, and how many and what licenses, what fabric capacity? This was the
Okay.
second
Okay.
question.
I mean, the cost, I mean, we're talking about, I mean, this is Dataflow Gen 2. So Dataflow Gen 2 are not cheap. That is true compared with other technologies. But I think that implementing that with notebooks could be tricky. I mean, now you have the logic. So, I mean, if you want to give it a try with a clone or something, might be able to replace that. But I think it makes it much, much easier for everyone if it's Dataflow, even it might cost a little bit more. I haven't checked on consumption. And of course, it will depend on the number of files that you have. But also something else, I thought this would come up. There is I don't know, Microsoft, when you're loading like Excel files and so on, and you want to turn on incremental refresh, it normally likes, at least from desktop, it would put a banner like, yeah, no, it's not going to work, right? You cannot do that if you're loading from SharePoint. But that's not true. So if you can know the date without opening the file, then of course you can do incremental refresh. So that should lower your compute costs. Of course, this is something that is out of the scope of this presentation, but you should be able to do that. Yeah. And then I have an article on my blog that kind of walks you through like how you can implement that. Like incremental refresh is Rina. If you type this, you should get to it. Yeah, incremental refresh from SAP APIs or almost anything. This is the article I was thinking about. And well, it's about putting some parameters, and there's a few tricks that it's not super intuitive, but it can be done. And I think Dataflow Gen 2 have something for that, but I haven't really played with it. Anyway, it's probably, yeah, something that you need to take care on. Not super easy. And again, for capacities, it's like, yeah, try it on a trial, see how much consumption you're getting. I mean, and what is the alternative, right? Because if you load that directly to the semantic model, you're going to use also a lot of compute like every time as well. So, and you will have less control. So it's not like there's a clear alternative either, from my perspective. So if you want to use Excel data sources, then they have to pay the price. If they want to pay that, then okay, build a data warehouse. Then I can connect directly with Power BI desktop if I want to.
Thank you. And last question from Roshan Khan or Icon. You were demonstrating something related to file on SharePoint, if I'm not mistaken. And he asked the following question, like, can Cloud not do it? I hope you will remember this part.
That I built that in Cloud? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah. Can Cloud not do it? You were doing something, and so he asked the question like, can Cloud do it or not do it as AI tool?
I have no idea what. I mean, I created. So I use Cloud to create all these data sources, and that was really nice. I mean, because of course I had to do it like I think 4 iterations or something, because I said, hey, we should have like some referential integrity, and I don't know, and some file should be one file, and some with different granularities, but please don't use underscores on the headers. I don't know. I had to tell him a few things until it looked more or less realistic. And then I hit some issues on one of the data flows, and it was quite impressive because I just gave him the template, so the PQT file. I downloaded, say, hey, please review this, and say, oh, and I'm getting this error. I kind of like, yeah, you should change this, and this, and it did work. So quite impressed, to be honest. I think I did that with a 4.7 thing, so I burned like probably all my tokens of the week. But still, it was well worth it because I don't think I would have solved that easily myself. That's a pretty interesting. I mean, it was finding like I cannot convert null to table, and there's like nowhere where nulls were just as table, but I don't know, maybe through the calculation, it kind of like it needs that. So I'm not sure. I don't think I found that error in Dataflow's Gen 1, so maybe it's a different engine thing. I have no idea. So, but at least it now works. Yeah.
And I would like to close our session with Christian's comment. At that time, at that part, when you were also talking about the file that's located on SharePoint, he mentioned that the link will break only if function is edited separately. That was the comment from
Well,
also his side.
that's a theory. That's a theory. But in practice, it can break in other circumstances. Because that's happened to me. I mean, because I don't want to break that. And naturally, I do not change functions because it's much more convenient to change queries. but I have experience in my own flesh that link between the function and the query breaking, and I think other members of the community have as well. And it terrifies me that this can happen. So that's why I'm stepping away from that. That's my view. I don't want to trust that this will not happen again. In this approach, I know for sure that this will not happen because it's the exact same query. So that makes it more powerful in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you very much once again. As we started our Q&A session with Aura's question, so let's close it with Aura's comment, who says that the refresh monitor report is pure gold. It shows clearly what went wrong and allows user to fix things themselves without a Power BI developer involved. So once again, thank you very much, Bernat, for your time, for sharing your experience, knowledge with these roughly 16 people. And I also made one mistake just by removing one guy from this session. It was by mistake. I hope he will accept my apologies. So because his name was just, he was Fernando from Mexico. Sorry for this. Because I didn't see his name, just the name was in numbers, so that was mistake from my side. My bad, sorry for this. And thank you once again very much. So I'm saying bye and thank you.